Good morning, everyone. And for those who are watching on different time zones or will watch this on a replay, good afternoon or good evening. My name is Marilyn. I'm the founder and CEO of Customized Training Solutions Private Limited, or CTS. And we are passionate about helping leaders and organizations who are continuous learners and action takers to transform and thrive in all aspects by co-creating customized program with the help of our world-class resources. We have served over 3,000 leaders from over 30 countries in different industries, and that includes Petronas, Sony Mobile, PruLife UK, Ayala Group, Chevron, Tencent, Jollibee Foods Corporation, and Shell, to name a few. Experts say that the pandemic will last for the next 3 to 5 years, and this is why we are organizing several interventions, including this interview, to help leaders who don't know how to stay relevant and adapt in the new normal or next normal, however you want to call it, and those who find it stressful to lead and ensure performance of a remote team, and for some who are actually afraid that they can't keep their team or their business moving forward. So, to be able to stay relevant, do continue. We would like to help you continue to lead effectively in any situation. And for today, it's my great pleasure to introduce our leader, Peter Cockcroft, sorry, and he has over 40 years of international hands-on experience ranging from middle management to board level in technical, operational, and commercial environments with Fortune 500 companies, state-owned enterprises, small businesses, and startup, including five IPOs in Asia, Australia, Middle East, Africa, USA, Europe, and he helps SMEs and corporations identify and manage risk and develop strategic business decisions for growth and sustainability with his extensive technical, strategic, and corporate experience. So, without so much further ado, I'd like to bring in Peter. Hi, Peter. Good morning.
Oh, hi. Thanks for inviting me on this show. It's my it's my first time I've ever seen you when you're not live.
Thank you, Peter, for for gracing our platform to be able to hopefully inspire more leaders around the globe. And I really appreciate you. I mean, I know you've been there, done that, and have a lot to share with us. So I'd like to jump in right away. So just to brief you and our audience, especially those who would be seeing us for the first time, right? So the first three questions is really for us to be able to understand from which perspective are you coming from. The next, the 4 to 6 question will be, I would say, the meaty or juicy part of this conversation. And the 7 to 8 question will be the Miss Universe questions for you. So let's jump in right away. So for the first question, Peter, I just wanted to have a better understanding in terms of your leadership experiences. I know you have a lot of that, and up until now, you've been still advising a lot of leaders from from around the globe, and for sure, you also have influencers. And I'm not sure if you do have leadership or favorite leadership styles that you'd like to recommend. So please feel free to share all those information for with us.
Do you want the short answer or the long answer?
Short
let
answer
me
will.
let me for you and the audience. I'm originally Australian,
Mm-hmm,
but I've been away for a long time,
mm-hmm,
and I was brought up in Australia in a very sporty background where very aggressive. You chose an entertainment, whether it's football or cricket or whatever it may be, and
mm-hmm,
usually the best player was the captain. And we, so he became the leader, I suppose. But then we found that a lot of the best players didn't want to be the captain because captain had other responsibilities, such as carrying the bags, making sure everyone turned up. So often the best player didn't become the captain or the boss.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to differentiate between who was the leader. In the good times, the captain was the leader because everything went fine. If we were winning the game, no problem. But if we were losing the game, we looked over towards the best player and got and and he when we had a crisis in the game, he was the one who uh, we looked to. So who's the leader? Is it the captain or is the guy that you or the person that you go to when you have a crisis? And I think it's the latter. I then went on and I worked internationally, and I've run companies in Philippines, in Indonesia, in Thailand, in India, in Pakistan, in France, um, and I worked for the governments in Indonesia, Korea, um, and East Timor, it's Timor Leste. So I've seen a lot of the different types of cultures, different problems with languages, and um, and the issues that come with working internationally with governments, with dictators, with democratic governments. So your question is who do I think of as being the most effective?
Yes, like what's your favorite leadership style based on your experience? Leading athletes from when your younger days, and also probably your experience why you are leading this way right now.
Well, everyone's got a natural way of doing things. Are you a bully? Are, are you a polite person? So I think that it depends on a little bit on how you are, but also on the situation. And being a leader, I've met some of the charismatic leaders. I've met Bill Clinton, um, the most charismatic people of the political level. I've met a Bill Clinton, Princess Diana, Janana Gusmao from East Timor, the first president there, and they're all charismatic. Are they are they the best leader? Now I look at countries and as they evolve. Indonesia, for example, the first president was President Sukarno, and he was charismatic. He got the country behind him, and he was the right leader for that time. The next person who came in was a bit tougher, very quiet, was better organized, and he was probably the best for that time. And so what I'm saying is leadership is situational. It depends on your situation. If you're a startup, the leader is the charismatic founder. Once you've started actually doing the work, maybe he's not the best person. So it depends on your circumstances.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Let me just put through like a short summary of what I got from you. So again, like what you've mentioned, and for sure that's how you also would lead people, is based on situation, right? um, like you've gave example of Bill Clinton, Princess Diana, whom you've personally met, and they're very charismatic, and yet um, you believe that, in from your experience as well as a young leader before, is that who will you actually approach when there's a need, or when there's a crisis. And again, like, there's no one size fit all. Based on what I hear from you, it's depending on the situation that you are in, and that's how you should actually lead your team. And having said that, what is leadership for you?
Okay, leadership for me is a bit like a strategy. I'm a believer in making things simple.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, in today's world, we have leadership has become a very big industry, and the universities teach it. And of course, any university has to have one semester
Mm-hmm.
for a topic. So therefore, they've got to make it more complex.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership for me is like this. If you have a strategy, it's got three features in it. One is where you are now, what is your goal, and how do you get there? Now, a leader is the person who takes you to that goal. So, a leader, by definition, has to have followers. So, he is the person who takes you to that, from where you are today to where you want to be tomorrow or the next day. And that's very important in today's in the pandemic circumstances. As you say, the world has changed and it's going to stay changed for a long time. Now, one of the one of the areas that I feel that we should be thinking about when we're talking about leaders is who is the best teacher. If you're learning to fly a plane, you want someone to teach you how to fly the plane who's actually done it before.
Exactly.
Now, eventually, they will, you go together with the instructor, and then the instructor will give the controls to you after a few lessons, and then when he feels that you're competent enough, he or she will let you go solo under supervision. And that's the same with leadership. I think that if you're learning how to be a leader, and everyone can do that, you need to have someone doing the initial holding the hands, instructing, had that experience before and has dealt with those risks and the decisions and the people issues that you're going to come up with.
Thank you for defining that. And again, it's important that, it's kind of difficult to be able to teach others when you never been actually there, right? Especially like in situation like you've said, like flying an airplane, and that's really a dangerous thing to do when you're not really experienced, or you haven't really learned from someone who has done it, right? And so I and it's interesting, like during my introduction as well, and you've made mention as well about it, that there are several challenges that we are facing, or different things that we are probably facing now compared to before, due to COVID-19. So I'm just curious to know, like, how would you define or describe the next normal based on your current experience, and being a leader for the last 40 years?
I think one of the issues about one of the most important attributes of being a leader
Mm-hmm.
is to make to be able to solve problems
Mm-hmm.
and to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a leader, you have to have some responsibility and some authority.
Mm-hmm.
And as you climb in an organization, you're often given more responsibility and not sometimes you're not given enough authority.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also not taught how to handle that. And
Mm-hmm.
so what we're seeing is when you're dealing with uncertainty, which we have now, we have
Mm-hmm.
large elements of uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
and and thus the risks that go into that.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot avoid the risks. We have to embrace those, and we have to identify, assess, and have a response plan. And that becomes part of your decision making authority. So we make that as your base. You have to be able to make decisions under uncertainty. Now, what are those uncertainties? Um, a very good description is from a organization called the Board of Innovation. The Board of Innovation is a group out of Belgium, and they have a fantastic website, and it's called boardofinnovation.com. And they talk about innovating in the what they call the low touch economy. That's what they're calling the world today, low touch. So the areas that we've, you know, the elements that we've historically worked with, the F&B, the small businesses, where they are, you know, where there's hand-to-hand activity, they're suffering all over the world. So we have to look at, as we say, the low-touch economy, and I think that's where that's how we have to look at our business. Also, look at our leadership style.
Mm-hmm.
We can't now touch and hug as much as we used to. We
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to handle people in a remote situation, whether it's Zoom or whether it's and that requires different skills. And they're not skills that you can. It's not so easy to learn because the leader. How does he learn those skills when he's not talking to anyone? So that's what I'm saying. That's the problem with what I'm saying is that we're going to have more leaders, but we're going to need more leaders, but they cannot learn on the job as they used to be able to.
Exactly. And that's the reason why, I mean, from the introduction I've mentioned, where how you can actually ensure perform I mean ensure performance of your team, despite you're working with a remote team, right? And that's what I believe you mean by low touch economy. It's really about leading and serving people without the need to be there, to be present physically, right? um and I mean, you've been experienced for like 40 years, and you've been in like almost all countries, I would say, like in almost all continents already, like leading people from middle management to board. And so for sure, you have a lot of experience and problems that you've also experienced being a corporate leader yourself and working for corporate leaders right now as an advisor mainly. And so what would you say would be the top three problems that leaders do face?
You mean today?
it possibly today or in general. Yeah, but again, like, I mean, we have, you've mentioned earlier that there are a few issues or problems that we are facing today that we don't, uh, not the previous leaders or previous times is not that apparent. So feel free to like share with us more on like what do you believe will be the top three problems today, or what could be the
Okay,
top.
I think one of the common problems that has been today as well as previously is
Mm-hmm.
I go back to the responsibility and authority.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you become a leader, you have to be given the authority and the responsibility
Mm-hmm.
to lead other people. Whether it's a financial authority, whether you have the people in your team, are they working with you? Are they working for other people? Are you talking about dealing with a community? Let's say, let's say you're a leader in a church, for example, in a religious organization. You don't have much authority over your customer. In other words, the people who come to the church or you know you have to you have to you have a responsibility to pass on your message, but you don't always have the authority. You can't tell them you've got to do this, this, and this. You have to sort of influence them. Now, and the same in the corporate world. You have to you have to be able to listen to your stakeholders. The ability to listen becomes more important the higher up that you go in an organization. And so you have to, in order to make good decisions, we have to be able to look at all the different options. And you don't have all the answers. And that's a critical attribute of being a leader. Now, you said three. One of the biggest problems we have now is social media. As a boss, as a leader, as anyone who makes decisions, is that the a previous world of having a hierarchical organization has changed. We it is more flat now, and everyone feels that they are part of the decision making process.
Mm-hmm.
Now they may just by going on Twitter with some fake name, they can still have a voice which can affect you. So
Mm-hmm.
social media is an incredible opportunity to get your message out, but it's also a barrier to getting um, to becoming a good leader. But we have to address that. You can't ignore it. I had a situation the other day. A guy who's is my age, and he was very proud. He said, "Oh, I don't I don't look at Twitter. Don't even have a I don't even have an account." And I says, "Well, you're going to have to, pal. I'm sorry. You're going to have to deal with that because it's not going away. Whether it's and they're your new stakeholders." And that brings me on to the other point is the ability to work with stakeholders. Now, stakeholders to me are you burst them into two. One is whoever can affect your activity. Remember, we talked about goals. We have goals anyone who can affect the outcome is a stakeholder. It doesn't need to be in your team. It could be in your boss. It could be your partner, corporate partner, or it could be the government. They can affect the outcome. So you have to address all of those people. So to be a leader, you have to understand how to identify your stakeholder, how to look at their needs and wants, and to be able to manage those needs and wants. And the other one is the other part of stakeholders are those that are affected by your project. Let's say you have a power station project in a remote area. You have local communities. You have maybe you're affecting the water supply. Maybe all these they also need to be addressed. And remember, the social media gives them a voice. You can't hide them anymore. In the previous generation, the big companies, the nasty big companies, could hide those guys, but now they've got a voice. So the stakeholder, being able to handle the stakeholders is an incredibly important part of leadership. So they're my the areas I feel that we should be looking at as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of whether you're sitting in an accounting office or you're trying to run a project in the middle of Thailand.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I hope I've actually summarized it properly. What I got from you is really more of like, the challenges we leaders do face in terms of having really that knowledge or understanding of what their responsibility, and having that authority to or empowerment to be able to actually like execute it, or whatever they have to do. And another challenge that what I've heard from you is that being able to listen and work with all different types of stakeholders, um, which is of course very very, I would say, people oriented. And then of course the changes in terms of the decision making process because of the social media, or the influence of social media nowadays. So we can't really get away from social media, as you say. And so that leads me to the next question. So because obviously we will not leave them with the problems, right? We wanted to also, like, although you mentioned a bit of some helpful tips or techniques to address some of the problems that you've mentioned, but what do you believe will be the important leadership capabilities and skills that leaders must have in the next normal to be able to continue to lead effectively?
I think they haven't changed too much. The ability to learn, the ability to learn to make decisions, the ability to uh, work in bite-sized time periods, because that's changed. We don't have time for a day of meetings to talk about things, because we can't get them, because our situation, our environment doesn't allow that.
Mm-hmm.
The so where does that where does that leave us? We need to be able to solve problems, make decisions, have the authority to make those decisions. Now, how do you do that in a low touch economy? Very difficult, because in the past, if we had it in an office environment, regardless of whether you work for the government or whether you work for a community or a corporation, you had someone down the hall that you could ask the advice of, or that you could meet in the elevator or the have a coffee with. Now you can't do that so easily. So the ability to learn from others in amongst your peers has been restricted. So now we have to convince your organization to allow people to learn as we're doing now, remotely. And one of the problems there is we don't, in these bad economic times, a lot of companies are suffering. So the first thing they cut is training. The second thing they cut is personnel. Oh, sorry, wages, and then personnel, because they're easy. Instead of looking at the, how do you grow your revenue, and by growing your revenue, you need the innovation, creativity, and you have to have the people to be able to produce uh, those creative juices and the innovative ideas. And the only way you can do that, and the best way to do that, is do it internally. And I go back to my example of the flight instructor. What what people need is a flight instructor, but it's not forever. It's only until they learn how to fly the plane themselves. That's what I think we need.
Thank you so much for that. And that actually reminds me a lot on how important it is as a leader to be a continuous learner, and also having that available within your organization, right? And again, for us to be able to adapt, I know, like, when you say adaptability, agility, and all this flexibility, and for you to be able to actually respond and to be able to, like, keep up with whatever changes that is happening in in the world, or during uncertain times, it's always the ability to learn, that will help you to be able to adapt to that, right? Because at the end of the day, how can you be creative, how can you adapt, how can you be agile enough if you don't know what to do, right? And that's where, like, although you've mentioned that, it's always the training that most organizations would cut, and yet that's what they need to be able to adapt and to, like, get through that process of really being able to address the problems that they have, right?
I think also, in order to become a good leader, you have to become humble. You've got to have humility. And one of the problems we have sometimes is a lot of bosses that you've met and I've met is the they think just because they have a title, it means that they're a better, they have more answers. And what we need to do, I think, is as a be an active listener, leave your ego, park your ego outside the room. And frankly, I have to say, men are worse than that, than women. As a generalization, um, so that's one of the things we have to think about, is being humble and being able to listen to other people, and also eliminate some of your biases. That one of the, say for example, in my situation, I'm I'm an old guy with a lot of experience. Now, that's really good. That's on the plus side. On the negative side is that we may have um, biases. My way is the only way. I've done this before. What do you know? And we have to be able to resist that. And that to me. So how do you do that? That's where a mentor comes in,
Mm-hmm.
a coach versus a mentor. You need the flight instructor for, maybe you learn on a single engine plane. Your flight instructor is for that. And then you become a pilot. You become a commercial pilot. So you're starting, to fly commercial planes. You need advice. Sometimes you need advice. What if this happens? How do I deal with a co-pilot who's a real bitch? Right? And you can't go back to your old flight instructor because your flight instructor previously, she's never been in a commercial plane. So you got to find a mentor. You got to find people that you can trust. The ability to trust is important. So you need a trusted advisor. So, oh, what do I do about this? You know, what if I have snow here? Whatever. The um, so you need someone also either in the organisation or in the um, someone that you know who has that you can help with those decisions. It usually isn't someone in your organisation because then you have a problem with. Uh, then that creates other problems. It's usually someone who's external.
And I really love what you said. I think you've given them like a few nuggets there in terms of like what are the top leadership capabilities on top of what I have actually put in the summary earlier. And I really love like how you shared about humility. And again, it's really important. And what I really like struck me more is that you actually showing me what humility means. I mean, we've met several times. I don't know how young are you, but but I'm so impressed how you are so eager to learn. And I remember our conversation, was that this week, right, or last week? Last week, yeah, when we've actually met up for coffee. And you've mentioned that you know what your strengths are, you're good at starting on things and all those stuff, and yet you actually told me that you need help on some things. It's really having that awareness and a humility to be able to ask for help when you know you need it, right? And I was so amazed, like, this guy who's been advising to prime ministers, who's been a country head, who's been a managing director for huge organizations, and asking me this question. I felt so humbled as well, and I felt like I wanted to be like this, and leaders must be like this.
Well, I think so. I think that it's important to learn from everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I would recommend to everyone is every time you go to have a meeting,
Mm-hmm.
walk out of that meeting and if it's better if you have another person say, what did we learn? What did we learn from that meeting? And it might be that you know that particular guy can't be trusted. You can't. Yeah, it could be, oh, that we're going to have a big problem here. It may not be anything that's in the meeting, but just your feeling. So if you walk out of every meeting and say, "What did I learn?" I think that's an incredibly powerful tool to use. And the same thing if you're having coffee with someone. Walk away. It doesn't matter whether it's someone a big shot, uh, lower down, whether it's your grandma or your grandson. You can learn something every time.
Exactly. And
And
that's amazing.
and that's how you. I think that's how we can improve ourselves. And being the first thing you ask someone if about leadership is to become aware, self-aware. They've got to be able to lead themselves. Now, one of the things I'm very bad at is time management, for example.
Mm.
I know that because I've written it down. One of the things I'm bad at. What are my weaknesses? So you write that down. So you don't be shy. Now, will I show that to my daughter? Oh, no, I won't do that because I'm too shy. But what I'm saying is that you have to look at your strengths and weaknesses of yourself first,
Mm-hmm.
and be, before you look at who your team members or whatever, and do the same thing with your boss. Don't tell him or her, but just look at the strengths and weaknesses, and then see where look at a strategy of how you can work around that.
Yes, true. And that's where everything starts. Every transformation starts from having that awareness, right? Of your strengths or of your areas of improvement.
I think so, and we in the coaching world we have one of the growing areas is life coaching,
Mm-hmm.
which is really good. The problem with life coaching is that they don't have much life, and the life coaches are usually don't have much experience in the world that you're looking at. They're not specific. If you're a race car driver, are how are you going to handle? And you need someone to talk to de-stress. How do you don't talk to me because I know nothing about race car driving. There's someone who has been in that world, who understands the jargon, and I think that's important for us. Is that we let's say culture. How do you define a culture in an organisation? It comes from the leader. And that culture could be being on time for meetings. It could be making sure that your reports are done on time. The or it might be a language culture, or it could be a culture of we want to have a diverse team. The more diverse your team, the better decisions are made. But that's scary because sometimes you don't have the same language. Yeah, or you're dealing with a woman who is really aggressive. But that's what you have to do as a leader and a manager. And remember, for me, management is today, leadership is tomorrow. What we do today is managing. What we're going to do tomorrow is leadership, and that's the way I define it.
Wow, that's really amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. And it's a good reminder as well for everyone. And let's go to the last two questions. I'm curious what you will answer me or what answer will I hear from you on this question. So if you have a magic wand and can use it, what will you do with it?
You mean in terms of leadership or in terms of personal?
um it doesn't matter. You can this is a very open question. I would say this last two will be an open question. So yeah, feel free to share with us even both your personal and professional wish. I would say.
I like to redo some of the mistakes I've made,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be one thing I like to do. And most of my mistakes have been with people.
Mm-hmm.
I I have been like many of us. We've looked at the good side of people rather than what actually happened when they screwed you over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's how I like to do.
Sorry, did I get it right? Is it redo or undo?
Redo.
Redo some of the mistakes you have made.
Yes.
Okay, because that's two
Uh,
different things. But so just making sure I got it correctly. So I mean, like we all make mistakes, and it's always on the part of what we learn from those mistakes that will matter most, right? In the end.
yeah, there's some of them you can't. You knew what you were doing at the time, but you thought, oh, it'll work out okay.
Mm-hmm.
But they often don't, especially with people. If you're talking about leadership, a magic wand is getting people to, as I said, park their ego
Mm-hmm.
outside the room before they go into a meeting. That would be good.
Mm-hmm. That's really for
Have a, have
sure.
a, have a, have a box. Have a box. Put your phone and your ego here before you come into my meeting.
Instead of the cell phone or devices,
Yeah.
it's their ego that they have to put in inside the box before going inside the meeting. And that's true. I mean, that's when there's ego. I mean, I've remembered several times that the from the interviews that I have, um and a lot of them actually, like, it's always about removing the ego from people or from leaders, because it really hinders you to really perform at your best, right? When you let the ego in the way.
Yeah, and we're seeing that in the political world now, of course. That,
Mm-hmm.
that we're not seeing any of the leaders that we've seen previously as um, they seem to be want to be in control rather than look at this who are the stakeholders and how they can help them.
Exactly.
Talking about parking things before a meeting. I remember years ago in the Philippines, in Manila, in your home country, we used to have a box outside the. We used to have meetings in the Mandarin Hotel in Makati, and there's a box there saying, "Please leave your handguns in the box before going into the meeting." And,
Wow.
and so you're taking away some of the men's masculinity by leaving their pistols in the box.
And that's the same with ego, right?
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. And so that leads me to my last question for you, which is if you were to ask yourself a question that you can best answer, what would it be? Feel free to share with us why you chose that question and why you can, answer that best.
I don't. I haven't thought about this actually. Um, Ask myself a question that I can best answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes back to what do you think you're good at? And if we go back into my own history, I'm good at getting things done,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I think that the bottom line of leadership is getting stuff done,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I think every leader should try and do. And of course, a good leader grows good leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the important thing. He has to be able to impart this to his stakeholders and his team members, for example. I'm not sure what answers your question, but but getting stuff done, I think, is important.
Exactly. I would, because I think that's also one of the top problems most leaders or organization would have. It's really like, even if they have the knowledge, is like, are they getting things done or are they implementing what they've learned? At the end of the day, you only get results when you get things done. Right.
Yeah, mm, I'll give you an example in your own country with three people who I met who were presidents of your country. One was Corey Aquino, who took over after her husband had been killed. She took over from Marcos with uh, with the public sentiment of people power, and she had never managed anything before, and she had to do deals with all sorts of political parties and but she was honest, a good person, but didn't have that. Certainly didn't have any charisma, but also didn't have the management ability, and she didn't have the power that was needed to be a president. The next president was another guy, a guy who was not very charismatic, and but he was an excellent at getting stuff done,
Mm-hmm.
and that was Fidel Ramos. He had a West Point degree, he had an MBA. He he came from Pangasinan. He was in the higher ups, but not really in the higher up families, but close. And then the next president was an idiot, but very charismatic. Estrada, extremely charismatic, but he had no idea. So of those three, which one do you want? The charismatic film star, the the housewife wearing a yellow dress, or the guy with his head down and the doer? Who is the best leader? And that's, I would say, the most charismatic person is of those three, and these are real people. Was by far the worst leader of your country. I don't know
I
whether I don't
agree.
know whether you agree with that, but
I've never really like thought of any political things in our country. I'm not that familiar. I don't watch news to be exact. So, but it's really a good insight for me, for to hear from you. I mean, you firsthand, I should be really like concerned about that. Really, because I mean, government officials really like have a huge effect, a huge influence, and a huge part of our reality. Anywhere we are,
Well,
right?
especially in countries like yourself, which have a lot of natural disasters.
True, true.
So
And
you want someone you want someone there who, the next typhoon,
exact.
yeah, the next volcanic eruption, who you feel comfortable with and that
Mm-hmm,
you trust. And that's what we're talking about here. What are the characteristics of a good leader?
mm-hmm,
Someone that you can trust to do a good job.
mm-hmm.
It may not be perfect, but it's a good job,
Yes.
and he's got the competence to do that.
Mm-hmm,
Even if he doesn't able to do it himself, he knows people around him. He's not his ego doesn't get in the way of finding experts, and that's what you need in a good leader: someone that you can rely on in an emergency.
mm-hmm. True, true. I mean, I think that's not only for just leaders, but um anyone within our community or around us. We wanted people whom we can trust, people who would do whatever they say they will, and at the same time will be reliable enough to, for us to, to rely on like crisis or any like
But
difficult.
you've defined a leader. A leader does not have to have a big position.
Exactly.
Your aunt could be a leader in your family.
True.
The your next door neighbor, if there's an emergency, someone gets knocked over by a car in front of your house. Maybe he's the leader. He's the one who organizes things.
True. I do.
You don't have to be a big shot to be a leader. Everyone can be a leader, and that's what we're here for.
Exactly. And that's a great reminder for everyone that, to take charge of their life and the people around them. I mean, because no matter where they are now, what they do, um, you can be a leader by, being trustworthy, by being reliable, and taking charge of yourself, your emotions, and all those stuff. So thank you so much for that great reminder, Peter. I really appreciate this conversation. And thank you for your time for this very humble conversation, I would say. I've learned a lot from you, and for sure, our audience also learned so much from this conversation. So, thank you, Peter, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. And feel free to, and please continue to join us in this journey to create opportunity through several interventions. And let's, create the world that we believe in. And remember that even the richest investor in this world say that investing in yourself is the best investment you can ever make in your life. So with that, we would like to leave you with this quote from Dolly Parton, that if your action create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. Thank you so much again, Peter. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And bye
Okay,
now.
thanks a
Thank
lot.
you, everyone.